Boy is humiliated by racist teacher. Little did he know everything would change the next day. Jamal Washington lowered his eyes when he felt Mr. Whitaker's finger pointed directly at his face. The words that came from the man in a blue shirt and striped tie echoed through the classroom like a stab to the heart. You again with this talk about not understanding the lesson. Maybe if you actually put in effort instead of daydreaming, you'd keep up with the rest of the class, Richard said with a voice dripping with contempt. The 14-year-old boy felt heat rising up his neck. He had only asked about a math equation he couldn't solve, but the teacher's response carried a tone everyone in the room recognized. It was the same tone Richard used every time he spoke to him, nothing like how he addressed the other students. Mr. Whitaker, I really tried doing the exercises at home, but nothing, Jamal. Don't give me weak excuses. Sit down and be quiet. If you can't keep up, that's your problem. The words cut deep. Jamal lowered his head and walked back to his desk at the back of the room, feeling all his classmates' eyes on him. It was always like this, the same humiliation, the same feeling of worthlessness. Jasmine, his classmate, whispered as he passed her, "Don't pay him any mind, Jamal, he's always like that." But how could he ignore it? How could he pretend those words didn't hurt? How could he overlook the fact that Mr. Whitaker never treated the other students that way? Jamal knew he wasn't stupid. At home, he could understand the material when he studied alone. The problem was that in the classroom, under Richard's intimidating glare, his mind just froze. The boy gripped his pencil tightly and tried to focus on the numbers on the page, but the teacher's words kept echoing in his head. Daydreaming, not trying hard enough, can't keep up. Each phrase was like another weight piling onto his shoulders. Richard Whitaker, 47 years old, continued the lesson as if nothing had happened. To him, it was just another normal morning at Lincoln Public Middle School in the Oakwood neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago. He had been teaching math for over 20 years and had his own views on discipline and results. When the bell rang for recess, Jamal was the last to leave the room. He always waited for everyone else to go first, avoiding the pitying looks and whispers from his classmates. Jasmine waited for him by the door. "Want to sit with me outside?" she asked with a kind smile. "No thanks. I'll stay here." Jamal replied, pulling a book from his backpack. Jasmine hesitated as if she wanted to say something else, but eventually left. Jamal stayed alone in the empty classroom, flipping through the pages of the history book he'd borrowed from the library. It was about great black figures in the United States, something he had started reading on his own, searching for role models who made him feel less alone. 15 minutes later, Richard returned to the room to grab some materials he'd forgotten. He saw Jamal reading and frowned. "What are you doing in here? Recess is for playing outside, not hogging space in the classroom." "I was just reading, Mr. Whitaker." "Reading what?" Richard walked over and saw the book. His expression darkened even more. "A history book? You can barely do basic math and you're wasting time with this?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out as we're just starting. Now, back to the story. Jamal closed the book slowly, feeling a mix of shame and anger swelling in his chest. He put the book back in his bag without a word, but Richard wasn't done. "You need to focus on the basics first, boy. Math is fundamental. Those other things are luxuries you can't afford right now." "But I enjoy reading about history, Mr. Whitaker. Enjoying it doesn't pay the bills. You need to be more realistic about your abilities." The words hit Jamal like a punch. Abilities. As if he were limited, as if he couldn't dream beyond what Richard deemed appropriate for him. The boy grabbed his backpack and left the classroom without another word. In the courtyard, he ran into his best friend, Tyler James, a red-headed boy with curly hair who lived in the same neighborhood. "Dude, you look awful." "What happened?" Tyler asked, biting into a bologna sandwich. "Mr. Whitaker, as usual," Jamal replied, sitting on the bench under the mango tree in the center of the yard. "Did he say something again?" "It's not just what he says, Tyler. It's how he says it, how he looks at me, how he treats me compared to the rest of you." Tyler stopped chewing. He'd noticed the differences, but never knew how to bring it. up with his friend. "Man, I know he's kinda tough on you." "Tough?" Jamal cut him off. "Tyler, have you ever heard him talk to Emily or Ethan the way he talks to me? Have you seen him question anyone else's abilities besides mine?" Tyler fell silent. The truth was uncomfortable but undeniable. Richard really treated Jamal differently, and both Tyler and the other classmates had noticed, but no one knew what to do about it. "Have you tried talking to him?" "Talk about what? That he treats me badly? He'll just deny it or say I'm imagining things, or worse, make things even harder for me." "What if you told your mum?" "My mum already has enough problems, Tyler. She works 2 jobs just to pay rent. I'm not giving her one more thing to worry about." Jamal thought of his mother, Letitia, a 35-year-old woman who worked as a cleaning assistant at a hospital in the mornings and as a cashier at a bakery in the afternoons. She always came home exhausted, but still found the energy to ask about school and help with his studies however she could. The bell rang again and everyone returned to class. The next lesson was English with Ms. Johnson, a kind 50-year-old woman who always treated every student with respect. Jamal breathed a sigh of relief. At least for the next 2 hours he could have peace. Ms. Johnson entered the room with a warm smile and greeted everyone. She had prepared a special activity on text interpretation and divided the class into groups. Jamal was placed in the same group as Jasmine, Tyler, and Ethan. "Today we'll be working with a text about the importance of education in social transformation," Ms. Johnson announced. "I want you to read, discuss, and prepare a presentation on the topic." Jamal perked up. This was exactly the kind of activity he loved. During the group discussion, his contributions were insightful and valuable. Jasmine was impressed by how he connected the text to real-life examples. "Wow, Jamal, you're really good at this," Ethan said. "Why don't you participate more in other classes?" "It's complicated," Jamal replied, avoiding details. Ms. Johnson moved around the room, observing the groups, and stopped by Jamal's when she heard him explaining a complex concept in a simple, clear way to his classmates. "Well done, Jamal. Excellent reasoning," she said, lightly touching his shoulder. The praise warmed Jamal's heart. It was so different from how he felt in math class. Here he could shine, show his potential, and feel valued. When English class ended, it was time for lunch. Jamal grabbed his lunchbox and headed to the cafeteria. The school provided free lunch for students in need, and though simple, the food was nutritious and well prepared. While eating rice, beans, and a small portion of chicken, Jamal watched the other students. Some laughed loudly, others talked about movies and games. He felt a bit apart, as if he lived in a different world from theirs. Not that his classmates were hostile, in fact most were quite friendly, but there was always this feeling that he had to try harder to be accepted, to prove he deserved to be there. After lunch, he had gym class with Coach Williams, a young and energetic man who treated everyone equally. During the soccer game, Jamal showed his skill with the ball. He was fast, had good dribbling, and excellent game vision. "Nice one, Jamal." "What a move," Coach Williams shouted when the boy made a perfect pass for Tyler James to score a goal. In those moments, Jamal felt normal, accepted, part of the group. Sports were one of the few places where he could completely forget about his problems in the classroom. But the good feeling didn't last long. The last class of the day was math again with Mr. Whitaker. The teacher walked into the room with a stack of graded tests in his hand and a serious expression on his face. "The grades on this test were disappointing," Mr. Whitaker announced. "I'll hand them back and go over the biggest mistakes." He started distributing the tests, making comments to some students. When it was Jamal's turn, Mr. Whitaker placed the test on his desk with more force than necessary. 4.5, he said loudly enough for the whole class to hear. "Once again, proving you're not paying attention in class." Jamal looked at the test and felt his stomach drop. He had studied, he had tried, but the numbers seemed to dance in front of him during the test. The pressure of being watched by Mr. Whitaker had frozen his mind. "I'll have to talk to your parents about your performance," Mr. Whitaker continued. "I can't let you keep going like this without taking action." "Mr. Whitaker, can I try doing extra exercises?" Jamal asked, desperate to avoid having his mom called to the school. "Extra exercises? You can barely handle the basics. The problem isn't lack of practice. its lack of commitment. Jasmine, who had scored an 8 on the test, looked at Jamal with pity. She wanted to say something to defend her classmate, but she didn't know how. The rest of the class passed in agony for Jamal. He pretended to pay attention, but his mind was focused on how he would tell his mum that the teacher wanted to talk to her. Letitia was already so tired, so worried about bills to pay. Now she'd have to worry about his problems at school too. When the final bell rang, Jamal was the first out of the classroom. He needed air, he needed to get out of there. He walked quickly down the hall, passed through the courtyard, and headed for the school gate. "Jamal, wait!" Tyler James called, running after him. "I'm not really in the mood to talk right now, Tyler. Dude, I know things are tough with Mr. Whitaker, but you don't know anything." Jamal snapped, turning to his friend. "You don't know what it's like to be treated like you're stupid every day. You don't know what it's like to feel like you have to prove you deserve to be here all the time. You don't get it." Tyler James was shocked by his friend's outburst. Jamal had never spoken to him like that before. "Sorry, I just wanted to help. I know, Tyler, sorry for yelling at you. It's just really hard." The two boys stood in silence for a moment. Tyler James wanted to find the right words, but he didn't know what to say. How do you comfort someone going through something you've never experienced? "Do you want me to walk home with you?" Tyler James offered. "No, thanks. I need to be alone for a bit." Jamal said goodbye to his friend and started the walk home. The walk took about 20 minutes on foot, passing through narrow streets and modest houses in the Oakwood neighborhood. Along the way, he thought about how to explain to his mother what was happening at school. The house where Jamal lived with his mother was small but well kept, 2 rooms, a kitchen, and a bathroom. Letitia always kept everything clean and organized, even with the hustle of working double shifts. When Jamal got home, his mother hadn't returned from the bakery yet. She wouldn't be back until around 7 in the evening. He used the time alone to try doing his homework, but the math problem seemed even more confusing after what had happened at school. At 7:15, Letitia arrived home carrying a bag with bread she'd gotten from the bakery and some fruit she'd managed to buy at a discount at the end of the day. "Hi, sweetheart. How was school today?" she asked, kissing her son on the forehead. "It was, fine," Jamal lied, unable to meet his mother's eyes. Letitia knew her son well enough to sense something was wrong. She had developed that sharp maternal intuition over the 14 years of raising Jamal alone, ever since his father had disappeared without explanation when he was just 2. "Jamal, I might be tired, but I'm not blind." "What happened?" "The boy sighed. He knew he couldn't hide anything from his mother for long. "My math teacher said he wants to talk to you." "Why? Did you do something?" "No, Mom, it's about my grades. I got a 4.5 on the test." Letitia sat beside her son at the small kitchen table. She could see the anguish in his eyes. "And why do you think you got that grade?" "I don't know. Mom, I swear I studied. I tried to take the test, but it's like my brain freezes in his class." "Freezes how?" Jamal hesitated. How could he explain feeling intimidated in class without making his mother worry even more? "It's just, he's kind of hard on me, more than with the others." "Hard how?" "He always questions me when I ask things. It always feels like he's waiting for me to fail. He talks to me differently." Letitia felt a chill in her stomach. As the mother of a black boy, she had always feared this day would come. She had hoped that inside the school Jamal would be safe from this kind of situation, but apparently he wasn't. "Differently how, son?" "Like I'm less capable than the other's mom, like he doesn't believe I can learn." Jamal's words confirmed Letitia's worst fears. She hugged him tightly, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to this teacher," she said, determination in her voice. "Mom, you don't have to. It'll just make things worse." "It won't make anything worse, Jamal. You have the right to be treated with respect at school. You're smart, you're capable, and no one has the right to make you think otherwise." That night, Letitia barely slept. She lay awake thinking about how to handle the situation with the teacher without causing more trouble for her son. As a woman who worked simple jobs, she felt intimidated by the idea of confronting a teacher. but as a mother, she couldn't let it slide. The next morning, Letitia asked to leave work early from the hospital and headed to Jamal's school. She had chosen her best dress, styled her hair carefully, and rehearsed what she would say multiple times. At the school office, she asked to speak to the principal, Mr. David Anderson, a man in his 60s who had run the school for over a decade. "Good morning, Mrs. Washington. How can I help you?" David asked, inviting her to sit in his office. "Good morning, Principal. I wanted to talk about some difficulties my son Jamal is having in math class." "Oh yes, Mr. Whitaker mentioned he'd like to talk to us about Jamal's performance. That's exactly what I wanted to discuss. But first, I'd like to understand how you evaluate my son's behavior at school." David checked some papers on his desk. "Jamal is an excellent student in all his other subjects. The teachers praise his participation, creativity, and respect for his classmates and staff. The only issue seems to be with math." "And you don't find that strange? A boy who does well in every other subject suddenly can't learn math?" David grew thoughtful. Truthfully, he had noticed this discrepancy in Jamal's performance, but hadn't deeply considered the possible reasons. Maybe it's just a specific difficulty with numbers. "Principal, my son does his homework with me. He calculates change, helps me with the family budget. He knows math. The problem isn't with numbers, it's with the classroom environment." At that moment, the door opened, and Richard walked into the room. He had been called to join the conversation. "Good morning, Mrs. Washington. I'm glad you came. We really need to talk about Jamal." Letitia took a deep breath and prepared for the most important conversation of her son's school life. "Mr. Whitaker, I'd like to understand why my son, who's a good student in every other subject, struggles so much specifically in your class." "Well, ma'am, math requires discipline and focus. Some kids have an easier time, others don't. But I've noticed Jamal has plenty of discipline and focus at home. He studies, he puts in the effort. Maybe he needs extra effort. Some students have to work harder to achieve the same results as others." The way Richard said "some students" set off an alarm in Letitia's mind. There was a connotation there she didn't like. "Mr. Whitaker, could you give me specific examples of Jamal's behaviors that justify the difficulties he's having?" Richard grew slightly uncomfortable with the direct question. "Well, he often asks questions that show he wasn't paying attention to the explanation. He seems distracted. And when he asks those questions, how do you respond?" "I tell him to pay closer attention." "How exactly?" Principal David watched the conversation with growing interest. He had never seen a mother question a teacher so directly, yet politely at the same time. "I explained that he needs to focus better in class. Mr. Whitaker, my son came home yesterday saying you questioned his abilities. Is that true?" Richard visibly tensed. "I only said he needs to be more realistic about his limitations." "Limitations?" Letitia's voice rose slightly. "What limitations are those, Mr. Whitaker?" "Not personal limitations, ma'am. They're circumstantial." "What do you mean by circumstantial?" Richard realized he had stepped into a delicate situation. He glanced at the principal, seeking support, but David was clearly interested in hearing the answer. "Well, children from certain backgrounds sometimes need different approaches." A heavy silence followed. Letitia felt her blood boil, but she kept her composure. "Mr. Whitaker, could you explain what you mean by certain backgrounds?" "I didn't mean anything specific, just that every child learns at their own pace." "But you just said children from certain backgrounds need different approaches. What backgrounds were you referring to?" David leaned forward in his chair. He was starting to understand what was happening, and he didn't like it one bit. "Mr. Whitaker, I'd like you to be clearer about what you meant." Richard realized he had said too much. He tried to backtrack. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was only referring to socio-economic differences that can affect academic performance." "Interesting," said Letitia, "because my son told me you suggested he shouldn't waste time reading history books, that he should focus only on the basics because of his abilities." "I only suggested he prioritize the subjects he struggles with." "And why? Did you assume he isn't capable of improving in history while studying math?" The conversation was growing increasingly tense. David decided to step in. Mr. Whitaker, I'd like to ask you a few questions. Have you reprimanded other students in Jamal's class the same way you reprimand him? I treat all my students equally. But have you ever told another student they were daydreaming when they asked questions? Well, have you ever questioned another student's abilities? Principal, have you ever told another student they shouldn't read about subjects outside the one you teach? Richard fell silent. The principal's questions were revealing a pattern of behavior he didn't know how to justify. Letitia watched the scene with a mix of relief and worry. Relief because finally someone in authority was questioning the teacher's behavior. Worry because she didn't know what the consequences would be for Jamal. Mr. Whitaker, David continued, I need you to be honest with me. Is there any specific reason you treat Jamal differently from the other students? I don't treat him differently, but his mother is here reporting specific incidents, and I've personally observed some interactions between you two that made me uncomfortable. This revelation surprised both Letitia and Richard. Had the principal noticed and been bothered by something? You've observed? Letitia asked. Yes, Mrs. Washington. On a few occasions when I passed by the classroom during math lessons, I noticed Mr. Whitaker used a different tone with your son. At the time, I thought it might just be my impression, but now, with what you're reporting, I see I should have looked into it sooner. Richard was clearly uneasy. He hadn't expected his behavior to have been noticed by the principal. Principal, I've always had the best intentions with all my students. Intentions aren't enough, Mr. Whitaker. Results matter, and the result is that we have a student who does well in all other subjects, but has a specific block. In your class, a student who comes home telling his mother he feels belittled and doubted in his abilities. David stood from his chair and walked to the window, looking out at the playground where children played during recess. Mr. Whitaker, I'll be very clear with you. This school is committed to quality education for all students, regardless of race, social class, or any other characteristic. If there's any bias influencing how you teach, we need to address it immediately. Principal, I'm not biased, Richard protested. You may not be consciously biased, but your actions suggest there is indeed differential treatment, and that needs to stop now. Letitia took a deep breath before speaking again. Principal, I don't want to cause trouble for anyone. I just want my son to have the same opportunity as every other student to learn and grow. And he will, Mrs. Washington. I can guarantee that. David returned to his chair and opened a drawer, pulling out a notepad. Mr. Whitaker, I'll be implementing some immediate measures. First, I'll observe some of your classes over the next few weeks to assess the classroom dynamics. Second, I'll speak with other students and parents to determine if there's a broader pattern of behavior. Third, you'll attend a training course on ethnic-racial relations in education. Principal, is that really necessary? Absolutely, necessary. And fourth, I want a weekly report on Jamal's progress, including the strategies you're using to help him overcome his difficulties. Richard fell silent for a few seconds, processing the consequences of the conversation. What if I don't agree to these measures? Then we'll have to reconsider your position at this school, Mr. Whitaker. Education is a right for everyone, and I won't allow that right to be denied to any student under my care. The firmness in the principal's voice made it clear there was no room for negotiation. Richard realized he had underestimated the consequences of his actions. All right, Principal, I agree to the measures. Good, and I expect you to start treating Jamal with the same respect and patience you show the other students, immediately. That's not a suggestion, it's an order. Letitia felt relieved, but still uneasy. She knew forcing a change in behavior didn't guarantee a genuine change in attitude. Principal, I'd like to ask for one more thing. Could my son have math tutoring with another teacher, just until he regains his confidence? Of course, Mrs. Washington. Ms. Roberts, who teaches 5th grade, usually tutors on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. I'm sure she'd be happy to help Jamal. Thank you so much, Principal. And Mr. Whitaker, I sincerely hope we can start fresh with a more positive relationship. Richard nodded, though his expression still showed resistance to change. When Letitia left the school, she felt emotionally drained but victorious. For the first time since Jamal had started reporting problems, she felt she'd done the right thing. Meanwhile, Jamal was in his English class, unaware of the conversation that was changing his school life. Ms. Johnson had assigned a creative writing exercise, and he was focused on crafting a story about a boy who dreamed of becoming a historian. "Very good, Jamal," Ms. Johnson said, reading over his shoulder. "What an engaging story. You have a natural talent for writing." The praise warmed Jamal's heart. If only he could feel the same recognition in every class. When math class arrived, Jamal walked in with his usual knot of dread. But when Mr. Whitaker entered, something was different. The teacher seemed restrained, less arrogant than usual. "Good morning, class," Richard said, his tone slightly different. During the lesson, Jamal noticed the teacher looking at him differently, not with the usual disdain, but with an expression he couldn't quite read. When Jamal asked a question about an equation, Richard answered without sarcasm or impatience. "That's a good question, Jamal. Let's work through it step by step together." The whole class noticed the shift. Jasmine glanced at Jamal in surprise. Something had changed, but no one knew what. At the end of class, Richard approached Jamal's desk. "Jamal, I'd like to talk with you after class. Can you stay a few minutes?" The boy's stomach turned to ice. What now? When everyone had left, Richard closed the door and pulled up a chair beside Jamal. "Jamal, I spoke with the principal and your mother today." The boy's eyes widened. His mother had come to school? "They made me realize some things about my teaching that maybe haven't been the best." Jamal didn't know what to say. He had never seen Richard act that way before. "I want you to know that you're a capable student. You're smart, you have potential, and I shouldn't have made you feel otherwise." The words sounded strange coming from Richard, as if he was forcing each one out. "Mr. Whitaker, let me finish. I know I haven't been fair to you. I know I treated you differently from the other students, and that was wrong." Jamal stayed silent, processing what he was hearing. "From now on, I want you to feel comfortable asking questions, participating in class, and showing your potential. And if you want, you can come to me whenever you have doubts, okay?" "Okay, Mr. Whitaker. And Jamal, you can keep reading your history books. In fact, I'd like you to tell me about what you're reading. Maybe I can learn something, too." Jamal left the room confused, but with a new feeling in his chest. For the first time in a long while, he felt like maybe there was hope things could get better. When he got home, his mother was in the kitchen making lunch. "Mom, did you go to the school today?" Letitia turned around with a smile on her face. "Yes, sweetheart, it was time to fix this situation. Mr. Whitaker talked to me today. He apologized. And how did that make you feel?" "Confused. He's never talked to me like that before." "And now, do you think things might get better?" "I don't know, Mom. It's weird. It's like he's trying to be different, but I don't know if it's real or just because you and the principal talked to him." Letitia sat beside her son. "Sweetheart, sometimes people need to be confronted about their mistakes to change. Maybe he really didn't realize how he was treating you, or maybe he knew but thought it was okay. So either way, now he knows it's not okay, and that's a start. But what if he goes back to treating me badly once everyone forgets about this conversation? Then we'll talk to the principal again. My son, you're not alone in this. Fight. I'll always be here to stand up for you." Jamal hugged his mother tightly. For the first time in a long time, he felt protected. The next day, Jamal arrived at school with a different expectation. During math class, he decided to test if Richard's change in attitude was real. He asked a question about logarithms. A topic being explained. "Mr. Whitaker, I didn't understand how to get to this answer." Richard stopped, took a deep breath, and walked over to Jamal's desk. "Let's see. How far did you get in your calculations?" It was different. His tone was respectful, patient. Jamal showed where he'd stopped, and Richard explained the rest without rushing, without impatience. "Do you understand now?" "I think so. Can I try the next exercise?" "Of course. And if you have questions, just ask." Jasmine, who had watched the whole interaction, was amazed by the change. At recess, she said to Jamal, "Wow, Mr. Whitaker was totally different today. What happened?" "My mum came to talk to him and the principal yesterday." "Really? What did she say?" "I don't know exactly, but it seems like it worked." "That's great, Jamal. You deserve to be treated with respect like everyone else. During recess, Jamal ran into Tyler James in the yard. Dude, did you see how different Richard was today? Yeah, I did. It's like he became a whole new person overnight. My mom talked to him yesterday. Your mom's awesome, man. She went in there and fixed it. Yeah, but now I'm worried about something else. What? What if he's only being nice because he had to? What if deep down he still thinks the same things about me? Tyler James thought for a moment. Man, maybe at first it'll be like that. But maybe over time he'll realize he was wrong about you. You think so? I think you should give him a chance, and yourself too. Maybe now you can show what you're capable of in math class. Jamal spent the rest of recess thinking about his friend's words. Maybe Tyler was right. Maybe it was time to really open up in math class, even if it meant risking disappointment again. In the next math class, Jamal decided to participate more actively. When Mr. Whitaker asked if anyone wanted to solve a problem on the board, he raised his hand. Jamal wants to try, very well. The boy walked to the board with his heart pounding. Every eye in the class was on him. He began solving the equation step by step, explaining his reasoning out loud. When he reached a point where he hesitated, he looked at Mr. Whitaker. Mr. Whitaker, I think this is where I always get stuck. Okay, let's think it through together. What you've done so far is correct. Now for the next step. What operation do you think we should do? Jamal thought for a moment and answered, I think it's division. Exactly, very good, keep going. The boy finished the solution and got it right. The whole class spontaneously applauded, and Jamal felt a wave of pride and relief. Excellent, Jamal, you explained your reasoning very well. Congratulations. For the first time in math class, Jamal felt smart, capable, and valued. In the weeks that followed, the dynamic in math class continued to change gradually. Mr. Whitaker made an effort to treat Jamal with the same respect he gave the other students, and Jamal, in turn, began participating more in class. Principal David Anderson kept his promise and visited the classroom several times during math lessons, discreetly observing the interactions. He noticed the improvement in Mr. Whitaker's behavior and Jamal's performance. 3 weeks after the initial conversation, David called Letitia for a follow-up meeting. Mrs. Washington, I wanted to update you on Jamal's situation. How is he doing? Very well. Both Mr. Whitaker and Jamal have shown significant changes. The teacher is treating your son with respect, and Jamal is participating more in class. And his grades? On the last test, he got a 7.5, a considerable improvement. Letitia smiled in relief. And how do you assess the sincerity of Mr. Whitaker's change? Well, at first it seemed forced, I'll admit, but in recent weeks, I've observed moments where his behavior seemed genuine. Maybe the forced reflection led to real reflection. I hope so. My son deserves the chance to learn in a respectful environment. I completely agree. And I want you to know I'll continue monitoring the situation. If there's any backsliding, we'll take stricter measures. When Letitia got home that afternoon, she found Jamal at the kitchen table doing math homework with focus. How's the studying going, sweetheart? Much better, Mom. Today I understood everything in class. That's great. And how are you feeling at school? It's still weird. Mr. Whitaker is being too nice. Sometimes it feels like he's trying too hard to be kind to me. And does that bother you? A little. I prefer when things feel natural. My son, change takes time. Maybe at first it's like this, a little forced, but with time, if he's really changed, it'll become more natural. What if he hasn't really changed? Then we'll know what to do. But for now, let's give him a chance, both for him and for you. Jamal kept dedicating himself to his studies and participating more in class. His math grades improved steadily, and he began regaining his lost confidence. A month after the initial confrontation, something unexpected happened. During math class, Mr. Whitaker was explaining a more advanced concept when Jamal raised his hand. Mr. Whitaker, I read about this in the history book I was reading. This kind of calculation was used by the ancient Egyptians to build the pyramids. The whole class turned to look at Jamal, surprised by the connection he had made. That's right, Jamal. Very interesting that you made that connection. Could you tell the class more about it? Jamal stood up and began explaining how the ancient Egyptians used advanced mathematics in architecture. His passion for the subject was clear, and his classmates listened with interest. "Thank you, Jamal. That was an excellent contribution to our lesson. It shows how math is present in so many areas of knowledge." At that moment, for the first time, Richard saw Jamal for who he truly was. A smart, curious boy, capable of making sophisticated connections between different subjects. After class, Richard asked Jamal to stay again. "Jamal, your explanation today was impressive. Did you really read about the Egyptians?" "I did, Mr. Whitaker. I love ancient history." "And you connected it to the math we're studying. That's very clever." "Thank you, sir." "Jamal, I want to apologize, truly this time." The boy looked at the teacher in surprise. "When your mother and the principal spoke to me, I was angry. I thought they were exaggerating, that you were being too sensitive. But today, seeing you make those connections, seeing how smart you are, I realized the problem was with me." Jamal didn't know what to say. "I had biases I didn't even know I had, and because of them I couldn't see who you really are. Will you forgive me?" "Of course, Mr. Whitaker. And thank you for not giving up, even when I made things hard for you." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now back to the story. From that day on, the relationship between Jamal and Richard truly changed. It wasn't forced anymore, but a genuine transformation based on mutual recognition of each other's worth and humanity. Richard began encouraging Jamal to make more connections between math and history, and even suggested he participate in the American Public School Mathematics Olympiad. "You really think I can do it?" Jamal asked, still unsure. "I'm certain you have a unique and interesting way of thinking. That could be a big advantage." Jamal accepted the challenge and began preparing for the competition with Richard's help, as well as Ms. Roberts, who continued tutoring him. During his preparation, Jamal discovered he truly had a talent for math. His earlier struggles weren't due to a lack of ability, but because of the hostile environment that had been created in the classroom. On the day of the first round of the Olympiad, Jamal was nervous but confident. Letitia took him to the school where the test was being held. "Son, no matter the result, I'm already proud of you. Thanks, Mom, for everything, for fighting, for me." "I'll always fight for you, Jamal, always." The test was challenging, but Jamal did well. 2 weeks later, the results were announced. He had advanced to the second round. When Richard heard the news, he personally congratulated Jamal. "I knew you could do it. I'm so proud." "Thank you, Mr. Whitaker, and thank you for believing in me. I should have believed from the start, but what matters is that now I know what you're capable of." The second round was even more difficult, and Jamal didn't advance to the third. But the important thing was that he had proven to himself he could compete at the same level as other students from schools across the region. The relationship between Jamal and Richard continued to grow. The teacher began to see the boy as one of his best students, not just in math, but as a bright young man with a promising future. Richard also started reflecting on his attitude toward other students and realized there were other subtle biases in his teaching that needed to be corrected. 6 months after the initial incident, Jamal was getting excellent grades in math and had become one of the most participative students in class. His self-esteem had been completely restored. During a parent-teacher conference, Richard made sure to praise Jamal in front of Letitia. "Mrs. Washington, your son is one of my best students. He has exceptional logical reasoning and an impressive ability to make connections between different subjects. Thank you so much, Mr. Whitaker, and thank you for giving him the chance to show his potential." "Actually, Ma'am, I should be thanking you. You taught me a very important lesson about how my biases can affect my students. It's made me a better teacher." That night, Jamal was doing homework when his mother sat beside him. "Son, are you happy at school now?" "Very, Mom. It's amazing how things can change when you don't accept unfair treatment." "And what did you learn from all this?" "I learned that I can't let anyone make me feel less than I am. And I learned that when you face a problem head-on, even when it's hard, things can get better." "Exactly. And you also learned that you're not alone. Whenever you need to fight for your rights, I'll be right by your side." "I know, Mom. and that makes me stronger. A year later, Jamal was in ninth grade and had become a leader in his class. He helped other students struggling with math and even started a study group where they discussed the connections between math and other subjects. Richard, in turn, had become a more aware and respectful teacher. He took several courses on diversity and inclusion in education and became an active voice in the school for equal treatment of all students. Principal David often used Jamal and Richard's story as an example of how problems can be resolved when there's open dialogue and a willingness to change from everyone involved. One Thursday afternoon, during math class, Richard made a special announcement. "Everyone, I have some great news to share. Jamal has been selected for a math mentorship program at the University of Chicago." The whole class applauded. Jamal turned red with joy and surprise. "Wait, what, Mr. Whitaker? I recommended you for the program, and they were impressed by your performance in the Olympiad and your creative approach to solving math problems. I just don't know what to say. Say you'll accept. It's an amazing opportunity to learn from university professors and meet other talented young people." Jamal looked at Jasmine and Tyler James, who were smiling proudly at their friend. "I accept, thank you so much, Mr. Whitaker." After class, Jamal rushed home to tell his mother the news. "Mom! Mom! You won't believe it!" "What is it, sweetheart?" "I got selected for a mentorship program at the University of Chicago." Letitia dropped the dish towel she was holding and hugged her son tightly. "Oh my God, I'm so proud. Tell me everything." Jamal explained the program and how Richard had recommended him. Letitia listened with tears in her eyes, remembering all the hard times they'd been through and how everything had changed. "Mom, are you crying?" "These are happy tears, son, tears of pride and gratitude for fighting for you when it was necessary. You've always fought for me, Mom, always, and I always will. But now I see you've also learned to stand up for yourself." The mentorship program at the University of Chicago lasted 6 months. Every Saturday, Jamal would go to the university and participate in activities with other young people interested in math. He learned about areas of math he didn't even know existed and met teachers who became inspirations for him. During one of the activities, the program coordinator asked the participants about their motivations for studying math. "Jamal, would you like to share your story with us?" "Of course, Mr. Whitaker. 2 years ago, I almost gave up on math. I thought I wasn't capable of learning, that I didn't have a talent for numbers. What changed? My mother. She wouldn't accept that I was treated unfairly at school. She fought for me and taught me to fight for myself. And now? Now I've discovered that I love math. And I've realized I can dream of becoming a teacher one day to help other students discover their potential too." The other program participants were moved by Jamal's story. Many related to moments when they had almost given up because of difficult situations. At the end of the program, each participant had to present a project. Jamal chose to develop a methodology for teaching math using connections to history and other areas of knowledge. "My project is called Connected Mathematics. The idea is to show how math is present in everything around us and how it connects to other subjects students already enjoy." His presentation was a success. The program coordinator remarked, "Jamal, your project shows impressive maturity and pedagogical vision for someone your age. You definitely have the potential to be an exceptional educator." When Jamal graduated from high school 3 years later, he had become a role model at school. His grades were excellent in all subjects, but especially in math and history. Richard, who remained his teacher throughout high school, always encouraged him to follow his dreams. "Jamal, have you decided what you'll study in college?" "Yes, Mr. Whitaker. I'm going to major in math education. I want to be a teacher." "Excellent choice. You'll be an amazing teacher. I hope to be like you've become, Mr. Whitaker. Someone who learns from their mistakes and changes for the better." Richard smiled, knowing the greatest compliment he could receive was seeing he had become a positive example for Jamal. On high school graduation day, Jamal was chosen by his classmates to give the farewell speech. "My dear classmates, teachers, and family, today is a day of celebration, but also reflection. During these school years, we've all faced challenges, some academic, some personal. I want to talk about the importance of never giving up and always standing up for our rights. He briefly shared, without naming names, his experience with prejudice and how he had overcome the difficulties. What I've learned is that when we face unfair situations, we have two choices: accept them passively or fight to change them. I chose to fight, with the help of my mother and people who believed in me. In the audience, Letitia cried with pride. Richard was also emotional, seeing how the boy he had almost destroyed had become a strong and inspiring young man. Today, I graduate knowing I'll study to become a math teacher, and I promise I'll use everything I've learned these years to be the kind of educator who treats every student with respect and helps each one discover their potential. When Jamal stepped off the stage, he was congratulated by everyone present. Richard approached him. "Jamal, that was an incredible speech, and I want you to know you've already changed my life for the better. You've taught me to be a better teacher and a better person. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker, for allowing yourself to change. Not everyone has that courage. And thank you for giving me a second chance. Everyone deserves a second chance, Mr. Whitaker. What matters is making the most of it." 5 years later, Jamal had earned his degree in mathematics education from the University of Chicago and had begun teaching at the same school where he had once been a student. Principal David Anderson, who still led the institution, had insisted on hiring him. "Jamal, it's an honor to have you back now as a teacher." "Thank you, Principal. I'm really moved to be here. Which grade will you be teaching?" "8th grade, the same grade I had my struggles in 10 years ago." "How poetic. And how do you feel?" "Ready. I know exactly the kind of teacher I want to be." On his first day, Jamal walked into a classroom full of 14-year-olds, the same age he had been when he faced his difficulties with Mr. Whitaker. "Good morning, everyone. My name is Jamal Washington, and I'll be your math teacher." He looked at each face in the room, seeing the diversity of backgrounds, social classes, and personalities. "Before we begin with the lesson, I want you all to know one thing. In my classroom, everyone is welcome, everyone is respected, and everyone is capable of learning. It doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like, or what your family situation is. Here, what matters is effort and the willingness to grow." A girl in the front row raised her hand. "Mr. Washington, did you go to this school?" "I did. I graduated from here 5 years ago." "And did you always like math?" Jamal smiled, remembering his own journey. "Actually, there was a time when I thought I wasn't good at math, but I had people who believed in me and helped me discover my potential, and now I'm here to do the same for you." A boy in the back, who reminded Jamal of himself at that age, asked timidly, "Mr. Washington, what if we don't understand something? Will you get mad?" "Never. Questions are a sign that you're thinking, that you're trying to learn. I want you to ask every question you need to." During that first lesson, Jamal explained a basic algebra concept, using a baking analogy, connecting math to everyday life. The students were engaged and participated eagerly. At the end of class, the shy boy from the back approached the desk. "Mr. Washington, I really liked today's lesson." "That's great. What's your name?" "Deshaun." "Mr. Washington, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Why did you want to become a teacher?" Jamal thought for a moment before answering. "Because I believe every student deserves someone who believes in them, and because I know how good it feels when that happens." Deshaun smiled and left the room. Jamal stayed behind for a few minutes, organizing his things and reflecting on how life had come full circle. Mr. Whitaker, now the school's academic coordinator, appeared at the door. "So, Mr. Washington, how was your first day?" "Amazing." "Mr. Whitaker." "Amazing. I'm so proud of you, and so happy to be working alongside you now." "I'm happy too, and thank you for everything, for teaching me what not to do, and then teaching me what to do." Our journey together really was special, wasn't it? It was life-changing for both of us. That evening, Jamal came home to find his mother preparing dinner. "So, Mr. Washington, how was your first day?" "Mom, it was perfect. I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be." "Tell me everything." Jamal told her about the students, the questions they asked, and how it felt to be in the position of someone who could make a difference in children's lives. "Mom, I want to thank you for fighting for me when I was a kid, for teaching me not to accept injustice, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Letitia, now 45, hugged her son tenderly. Sweetheart, you don't have to thank me. I did what any mother would do. No, Mom. Not every mother would have the courage to go to school and stand up to a teacher. Not every mother would teach her son to fight for his rights. And you, my son, became the man I always dreamed you'd be. Honest, brave, dedicated to doing good. 2 years later, the connected mathematics methodology Jamal had developed during his mentorship program at the University of Chicago was being used in several schools across the region. He had become a reference in math education for public school students. During a school science fair, Jamal guided a project by 3 students who were investigating the use of math in colonial American architecture. The project won first place in its category. Mr. Jamal, can you guide us for the next phase of the fair? Asked Destiny, one of the students in the project. Of course, I'm so proud of you all. Mr. Jamal, do you think we can go far with this? Destiny, you can go as far as you want. The important thing is to never stop dreaming and always push yourself to grow. Deshaun, the shy boy who had approached Jamal on the first day of class, had become one of the top students in the group. During a lesson, he made a brilliant observation about prime numbers that impressed the whole class. Excellent reasoning. Deshaun, Jamal said, have you ever thought about joining the Math Olympiad? Me? I don't know if I'm good enough. Deshaun, you're more than good enough. And even if you don't make it to the finals, what matters is trying. Would you be up for preparing with me after school? I would, Mr. Jamal. 3 months later, Deshaun advanced to the second round of the Olympiad, following in his teacher's footsteps. One Friday afternoon, after finishing his classes, Jamal headed to the teacher's lounge to gather his materials. Richard was there, grading papers. Richard, can I ask you something? Of course, Jamal. Do you regret how you treated me when I was a student? Richard stopped grading and looked directly at Jamal. I regret it deeply, but at the same time, I'm grateful for everything that experience taught me. How so? It showed me I had biases I didn't even know existed. It forced me to rethink how I teach and how I see my students. If it weren't for that, I'd have kept perpetuating injustices without even realizing it. And now? Now I know that every student who walks into my classroom brings a world of possibilities. My role isn't to judge or limit them, but to discover and bring out the best in each one. That's exactly how I see it too. Jamal, you know you inspired me to change, right? Seeing how you transformed, how you overcame everything, how you became this amazing teacher. It motivates me every day to be better. And you know you inspired me to be the teacher I am today, right? Both in what I shouldn't do and what I should. The 2 men smiled, recognizing how their lives had intertwined in unexpected and transformative ways. One Monday morning, Jamal arrived at school and found a familiar scene. A mother speaking heatedly with Principal David Anderson at the front desk. My son is being humiliated every day in that teacher's class, the woman said. He comes home, saying he doesn't want to come to school anymore. Jamal approached quietly. Excuse me, Principal, can I help? Jamal, Mrs. Thompson is reporting some issues her son is having in one of his classes. Mrs. Thompson, what's your son's name? James, he's in 7th grade. Ah, I know James. He's a student in Ms. Roberts' math class, right? Yes, he is, and she's been treating him very poorly. Jamal and David exchanged glances. It was a situation similar to what Jamal had gone through years before. Mrs. Thompson, let's talk more about this, David suggested. Principal, if I may, I'd like to join this conversation. I went through something similar when I was a student here. Of course, Jamal, your experience could be valuable. The 3 of them headed to the principal's office. Mrs. Thompson explained how James had changed, how he'd lost motivation for school, and how he reported unfair treatment from Ms. Roberts. Mrs. Thompson, what you're describing reminds me a lot of what happened to me when I was James's age, Jamal said. How so? I also faced prejudice from a teacher. My mother came here, spoke with the principal, and we managed to resolve the situation. And it worked? Better than worked. That experience changed my life for the better. Not just because the problem was solved, but because I learned to stand up for my rights. What did you do? First, we spoke directly with the teacher, making it clear the behavior was unacceptable. Then we set up close monitoring of the situation, and the teacher took a training course. David nodded. And I can assure you, we'll do the same now, Mrs. Thompson. Mr. Washington, do you think it's worth trying to resolve this, or should I transfer James to another school? Ma'am, sometimes a change is necessary, but I believe it's always worth trying to fix things first, especially because if we don't confront the problem, it might repeat itself elsewhere. What if it doesn't work? If it doesn't, we'll find other solutions, but let's try first, okay? The conversation with Ms. Roberts followed a pattern similar to what had happened with Mr. Whitaker years earlier. At first, she denied any unfair treatment, but when confronted with specific examples, she began to acknowledge she might have some unconscious biases. David implemented the same measures he'd used with Mr. Whitaker: classroom observations, weekly reports, and a training course. 3 months later, James had significantly improved his math performance and regained his love for school. Mr. Washington, thank you so much for helping us, Mrs. Thompson said during a follow-up meeting. I'm the one who's grateful for the chance to give back the help we received years ago. James told me you shared your experience as a student with him. I did. I thought it might help him understand he wasn't alone and that things could get better. He was really inspired. Said he wants to be a teacher like you when he grows up. Jamal smiled, thinking about how life sometimes takes unexpected turns. At the end of the school year, Jamal was voted by the students as the best teacher in the school. During the award ceremony, he was called to the stage to receive the honor. I want to dedicate this award to every student who's ever faced struggles in school, Jamal said, and especially to my mother, who taught me that education is a right worth fighting for. In the audience, Letitia cried with pride. Richard clapped enthusiastically. David smiled, satisfied to see how what could have been a traumatic situation had turned into inspiration for positive change. I also want to thank Mr. Whitaker, who's here with us today. He taught me that we can all change, that we can all grow, that it's never too late to become a better person. Richard stood and waved at Jamal, visibly moved. And finally, I want to say to all the students here today, you are capable of anything you dream. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And if someone tries, fight for your rights. You deserve respect, you deserve opportunities, you deserve to be happy. The auditorium erupted in applause. The students stood and cheered for their teacher, who had become so much more than an educator. He had become an example of perseverance and determination. After the ceremony, as Jamal packed up his things, Deshawn approached him. Mr. Washington, I made it to the 3rd round of the Math Olympiad. Deshawn, that's amazing news. I'm so proud of you. And I have even better news. What is it? I've decided I want to study to be a math teacher too. I want to be like you. Jamal hugged the boy, feeling his mission as an educator was being fulfilled in the best way possible. Deshawn, you're going to be an incredible teacher, and I'll be here to support you every step of the way. 10 years had passed since that day when the young Jamal had been humiliated in the classroom. What could have been just a traumatic experience had turned into a journey of growth, transformation, and inspiration. Jamal looked out the school window and saw children playing in the yard, each carrying their own dreams and facing their own challenges. He knew not all of them would have a mother like Letitia, who would fight for them. Not all would have a teacher like Mr. Whitaker, capable of recognizing his mistakes and changing. Not all would have a principal like David, willing to confront difficult situations. But he knew that as long as he was there, he would do his part to make sure every child who passed through his classroom felt valued, respected, and capable of reaching their dreams. That afternoon, Jamal walked home with a smile on his face and gratitude in his heart. His journey had been hard, but it had also been transformative, and now he was using everything he had learned to help other young people discover their own potential. When he got home, he found his mother reading a book on the porch. "So, my favorite teacher, how was your day?" "Mom, it was a wonderful day, full of possibilities." "Tell me about it." Jamal sat beside his mother and told her about Deshawn making it to the 3rd round of the Olympiad, about James overcoming his struggles, about the award he had received. "My son, Do you have any idea how many lives you've already changed? Not more than you changed mine, Mom. The difference is, now you're multiplying that. Every student you inspire can inspire others in the future. That's what I think. About every day, how I can make a difference. And you do, my love. You make so much more of a difference than you realize. Mother and son sat in silence for a few minutes, enjoying the evening and reflecting on the journey they had taken together. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever regret going to the school that day to defend me? Never. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. Why? Because in that moment I wasn't just fighting for you, I was fighting for every child's right to be treated with dignity. And today, seeing you as a teacher, I know that fight was worth it. Thank you for never giving up on me. And thank you for never giving up on yourself. They hugged, knowing their story was so much more than a personal journey. It was an example of how love, courage, and persistence can transform not just one life, but an entire community. That night, Jamal prepared his lessons for the next day, thinking of each of his students and how he could help them discover their unique talents. He knew some would face difficulties, some would feel discouraged, some would question their own abilities, but he also knew that with patience, respect, and dedication, everyone could find their path to success. Everyone could discover they were capable of far more than they imagined. And so, the story that had begun with humiliation and prejudice turned into a tale of hope, growth, and transformation. A story that showed how sometimes the greatest challenges can become the greatest opportunities for growth. When Jamal turned off the light and went to sleep, he smiled, thinking about the next day. Another chance to make a difference in his students' lives, another day to sow hope and reap transformations. The journey had been long and not always easy, but every step had been worth it. And the best part was knowing the story was only just beginning, because every student he inspired had the potential to inspire many others in the future. The boy who had once been humiliated in the classroom had become the teacher who ensured no other student would go through the same experience. And that was the most beautiful transformation of all. End of story. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. Now tell us what you thought of this moving journey of overcoming and transformation. What stood out to you most in Jamal's story? Do you believe situations like this still happen in schools? Share your thoughts and your own experiences with us. Leave your honest reflections in the comments on how prejudice can be tackled in education. We'd love to read your contributions. Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories.